Do you feel completely overwhelmed when speaking in front of people? Perhaps you have something really important you want to say, but when you start speaking, you start to panic. Your mind goes blank and you forget all about that powerful message because you're too nervous. You have a strong vision, a powerful mission, and an impactful story that you want to share with the world, but you leave out all of the important details for that story or that vision to impact people. And that's a really discouraging place to be. So in this video, I want to talk about why that's happening to you, why your mind is working against you when speaking in front of people, and how you can overcome your fear of speaking. All right, guys, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruben, and I used to suffer from severe social anxiety. I was able to overcome it a few years ago, and now I help other men fully overcome it as well. And all right, so let's get into this full-on intense nervousness when speaking in front of people. And the one thing, oh wow, these birds. Okay, and so one of the things I want to highlight in this video, I want to make it very clear, is there's a distinction between nervousness and terror. Okay, so if you feel like your fear of speaking in front of people, it is on the verge of complete panic, complete terror. So that mainstream advice of just practice more or be more confident, it doesn't feel like it applies to you, then I want you to stay with me until the end of the video because we're going to flush that out. And so my story, my experience with it, in my case, it was complete terror. It was complete panic inside. And I used to work in the software industry. So in the software industry, there's a ton of meetings all of the time. There's key stakeholders, managers, executives, all with a vested interest in the projects going on. And so the meetings can be high pressure, high stress. And in those meetings, you're put on the spot to speak a lot. And it could even be just working within my own team, like brainstorming, bringing forward ideas. And in those moments, I would either, so if I had the option to, in those meetings, to bring forward my ideas, your concerns, let's brainstorm for the team, I just wouldn't. If I had the option, I just wouldn't speak up. But if I was put on the spot, but the terror was so intense, it felt like somebody came up and just like rang me like a bell, boom, and then my body, my whole body would vibrate. I would vibrate with this intense fear. I would vibrate, my voice would get shaky, I would lose my memory. And I remember the physical symptoms were so bad that when I would speak, my voice would be shaky, I would start stuttering. I remember the people, because the people in the meetings would be wanting to listen to what I had to say, but when they saw the physical symptoms that were so bad, it was always the same reaction. They would look at the ground because I made them so uncomfortable. They would look at the ground and it's almost like they would be embarrassed for me. And it was a really shameful thing. It got super discouraging and it got just extremely embarrassing for me to speak in front of people. And so I started to get really worried, right? Because as the years were passing me by, you know, I knew I wanted to get into those leadership type of roles, or I knew I wanted to start my own business one day. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to help in the most impactful way possible, possibly speaking on stage and doing big public speaking gigs and things like that. And so I started to get really worried. I started to look into solutions. Like I started going to Toastmasters for public speaking. I started looking up or asking my managers and my mentors, you know, how do I overcome this intense terror that I'm feeling? And it was always the same, you know, surface advice, focus on the words when you're speaking, or you know, try to be prepared before you speak. And it just didn't apply to me because I would be completely dissociated, right? Which means I would completely leave my body. My mind and my body would completely disconnect because what was going on, the panic in my body was too intense. So I completely dissociate, and these sort of speaking these sort of speaking moments, they were like out of body experiences for me. So none of that mainstream advice applied to me. At one point I told my therapist, like, I was really discouraged and I wasn't sure what to do. I asked her, am I stuck like this forever? And her suggestion was, you know, have you ever thought about taking pills, like an anxiety pill, or popping an anxiety pill before you public speak? She had a client that did that as well. You know, I tried them before. I didn't like the way they made me feel, and I never felt like it got to the root anyway. So for me, that was not an option for me. I actually wrote an ebook that goes further into my story if you want to learn more about everything I went through, everything I tried, and then what I finally stumbled on to get better from the social anxiety. So I'll link it below the video. You can download it for free, have a read through that, and that'll give you a better understanding of how you can fully recover as well. All right guys, so I want to give you a tip on how you can start speaking in front of people more confidently, and not just getting into those speaking moments and just getting it over with the least amount of embarrassment possible. Saying the bare minimum to save yourself from being embarrassed by showing those physical symptoms, that stuttering and all that stuff, saving yourself embarrassment and just getting out of there with the least amount of words. That's what I used to do. I want you to relay those important ideas you have, those life lessons, that impactful story of yours, and I want you to speak it in a way that it impacts others, right? Just like you pictured in your head before that moment you spoke. The way you pictured it in your head, the way you want to influence and impact other people, I want you to manifest that in the moment. And I'm gonna show you how to do that. So the first thing, it's important to kind of break down, what is the speaking in front of people. It doesn't matter if it's 100 people, it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 people, right? It's basically once you start feeling eyes on you. So it could even be if you're speaking to one person one-on-one and then another person joins the conversation and suddenly you feel a second set of eyes on you. That's speaking in front of people, right? The internal experience is the same. It's what's happening is there's your emotional brain setting off an alarm and it's triggering your fight or flight response. And your fight or flight response, its first option is always to flee the scene, but it's decided that you can't, so it settles you in to completely freeze. It freezes your body, it takes over your breathing, raises your heart rate, makes your memory go blank. And so while it's trying to shut your body down, you're trying to speak. And so that's what happens when you start stuttering, and that's what happens when you can't access your memory. Now, how do you shift? Or I guess first let's just talk about a bit of a mindset thing here. Now, I want you to notice when you go into these speaking situations, be well aware of the multiplicity of your mind, right? There's a part that wants you to share your story, and it wants to help others. It wants to give those ideas. It wants to share your story and those life lessons. Notice that's your true self. That's your higher self. It's the higher energy within you. We all have it. It's that aspect of your personality. Now notice that there's another aspect or part of your personality in these speaking events that wants to shut you down. So it wants you to stop speaking. It wants to save you from embarrassment, humiliation, all that stuff. And it's important to gain separation from this frightened part of you. Now, a good exercise that you could do is, a lot of the guys that I work with, I'll ask them to close their eyes. This part, because when they come to me, the message that they say or what they state is, I am terrified of speaking. I can't do it. But then when I say, okay, close your eyes for a sec, how much of this really scared part of your personality, how much space in your body is it taking up? And you know, usually the guys will say, they'll close their eyes and they'll say about 80%. 80% when it's really intense. And that'll give them a glimpse. Right away, they'll start to notice, like, wow, it's only 80%. So I'll say, it's not 100%, is it? And they'll say, no, it's only 80%. So then my next question will be, can you gain separation? Can you gain some separation from that frightened part? And how do you do that? And how do you gain that separation? You start to speak to that frightened part in the second voice. Always switch to the second voice. It's important when the terror is really, really intense in these situations, stop using I statements like, I'm gonna be confident. No. Switch to you and gain separation from that intense emotion, that intense fear, and speak to it from a compassionate place within you. That'll shift you out of that frightened aspect over into your true self, your higher self. And then when I re-ask the question, how much space is it taking in your body now? The guys will say, it's only about 20%, 30%. And that's how you start to gain power, because as you're able to do this more and more, that frightened part of you loses more and more power over you. And that's how you start to get over this intense fear of speaking in front of people. Now, it's important to realize that fight or flight response, that alarm that goes off, it's always triggered by a painful emotion. Painful emotion triggers fear, which triggers the fight or flight response. In my case, it was shame. I used to constantly get shamed on the soccer field, embarrassed in front of people by my father. So that shame, the way it settled into my body, it started triggering off these alarms in every kind of speaking situation I was into, because it was, my body would sense it as danger whenever I was in front of groups and I had to speak, because it was a fear of humiliation. Now, it's important to eventually get down to that painful emotion, reprocess it and heal it so the alarms don't go off, right? So, but the first step is to just gain separation and realize this is not you. It's not your true self. It's just an aspect or a part of your personality that gets triggered by a painful emotion in certain situations. All right. So I hope this video helps, guys. I hope it makes you realize multiplicity of the mind is completely normal. You're not schizophrenic. They're just certain aspects of your personality, and you need to gain some distance from the frightened ones, shift into your higher self, and start speaking from this place. Okay. So what you can do is, if you found this video helpful, you can join my private Facebook group. We got so many great guys in there. They're holding space, they're witnessing everybody's healing, and they are there to support each other. So I'm in there as well. You'll have my support. You can ask me questions. I'll be there to support you as well. So you're more than welcome to join the group. And now, if you want a little more help with this, okay? So if you want to get down all the way to the emotion and you need help reprocessing them so those alarms no longer go off, what I've done is I've made a free training for you, and I'll also link that below the video. So what you can do is go through the training and learn that system to go all the way down from the fight or flight, down to the fear, down to the painful emotions, and you can learn how to reprocess that, unburden it, release it from your psyche, from your entire being, so those alarms don't go off anymore. And so once you go into those situations, you don't get triggered. Because once you do that, guys, your ability, your growth in that area, it's not incremental. It's not like you get a little bit better. It's exponential. Think of you're going into these situations and you get not triggered whatsoever. No trigger, because there's no painful emotion. There's no alarm going off, right? I remember this very vividly when I started unburdening and releasing these emotions. I remember I was in A&W. Yeah, I was eating fast food. Straight up, I was eating fast food. I ordered a burger. So I ordered my food. I went and sat down. I remember the cashier, she had this order ready, and she said, "Hey, sir, did you order this, right? Did you order this?" And I remember I yelled. I yelled in front of everybody in the restaurant, and I said, "No, that's not what I ordered. I ordered a different burger." And then I thought for a second, and I was like, "Oh my, like, what the hell just happened? Did I just yell? Did I just speak up so loudly in front of an entire fast food joint. And that's what happens. That's what happens. It hits and it's exponential because there's no more alarms. So be sure to check out that free training if you're interested in removing those alarms completely. All right, so I hope that helps, guys. Talk to you later.